All righty. Well, thanks for the opportunity, everybody, and good to see a lot of old friends. So, the Brindley name, and I did this years ago just to research your name because everybody's kind of interested. Where'd your name derive from? And ours, in the case, derived from an old English name from Staffordshire and Cheshire over in England, and the meaning of Brindley meant burnt woodlands or burnt lays. So, and the Brindleys, from all the history, pretty much have been into farming most of their life, okay? So it kind of fell in place with the name. Sometime between 1906 and 1915, somewhere in that neighborhood, my great-grandfather came back to Bristol, and they bought 25 acres down here where Robert Weed Plywood is now. They owned 25 acres that actually was part of the ball diamond where he played ball on, and Robert Weed Plywood. Anyway, they started I'd call it a horticulture business. They were growing plants and flowers, and it wasn't grain. It's too small of a property probably to raise grain, but they raised a lot of horticulture products.
After Augustus passed away in 1946, and like I said, he passed away in 35, Molly sold off the farm to
LeCounts.
The LeCount family.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They sold off the south side of the tracks. Well, Grandma and Grandpa, sometime prior to that, had bought the north side of the tracks where the elementary school's at, all the way around to the Nazarene Church. Okay, where that's at.
Clear up behind the old Boger property, if you know where that's at. So,
okay.
Yep.
They bought that property in there.
Yep.
Well, 1946, Molly, which was our great-grandmother, sold the farm, and Grandma and Grandpa bought 2 lots in town. Lots 91 and 92. I can't figure out just where they are, other than the fact they were probably the 2 lots behind the Methodist church, because there's a house built there, and that's where Molly lived, and Grandpa's brother James lived.
And again, all we know is they raised crops down there. They had 1 greenhouse on the south side of the tracks, and my grandparents had 2 greenhouses on the north side of the tracks. And
Grandma and Grandpa had 2 on the south side. They were on the south side. Augustus and Molly was on the north side of the tracks.
Okay, I got it backwards then.
Augustus and Molly was on the south side, and Grandma and Grandpa's had 2 outhouses on the north side of the tracks.
And I can remember the 2 on the north side. I don't remember the ones on the south.
They paralleled the track.
Yeah.
And there was a house sitting there beside it, and that's where Grandma and Grandpa raised flowers, and they sold to
Pickerels, Kreider's, Judson's out here. They were just all over South Bend farmers market, places like that. They wholesaled a lot of crops, and Dale and I can remember because Dale got run over on a wagon out there.
Yeah.
Cutting flocks. We'd cut them in flats, stack them on the wagon, and they'd haul them up in a station wagon. My grandpa was famous for having old station wagons and haul them to the markets. So
what I haven't been able to figure out is the actual date that they bought the
Floyd House.
Floyd House.
Across the street here, the Murphy.
The street,
yeah.
Right of town here. Mom and Dad were married in there. I was conceived in there. And after my first year, Mom and Dad built on 901 Division Street, or 901 North Division Street. They built a 2-room house.
Yeah, they lived in it as they went. They built the garage, lived in it, built the next room, lived in it. And yeah.
And that was in 51 they built
51.
Yep. Somewhere between 51 and 52 or 3, Dad built the shop for Grandma and Grandpa.
The flower shop next door there. Yeah.
So
yep.
That's as early as I can remember back, them getting into, our mom at least explained that's what happened.
Now, where was that located?
The flower shop's right here on...
Right across the street. You know where the Murphy Bed and Breakfast is? Mm-hmm. Okay. That was my grandparents' house.
That was my grandparents' house.
From the early 40s to 1972.
Okay.
Yeah, I've traced it back to early...
That little building?
The little white building my dad built, yeah.
My dad built
That's a flower shop.
That was a flower shop.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep. So. Yeah, so all through that time frame, and some of you may remember, because I do as a kid, busy times were weddings and school functions. So if you need a corsage or something like that, you go to the florist up here. And I remember my mom and everybody remember Tommy Thompson? He was a teacher here in town. Tommy used to work for him, and when they're busy time, and they'd put together all the corsages and all the arrangements. So
Rick, you said that they sold to Kreiders. I find that interesting because Kreiders.
Raised their own too.
Yeah.
But even like Judson's, they all partnered, and what one didn't raise, they flopped to the next.
Okay.
So get a good idea is Gramps and them raised particularly phlox, gladiolas, and baby's breath, if you know what baby's breath is. So those items, the baby's breath especially, weren't readily available. So
Now, Rick, I remember as a kid fields of glads out there.
that's what they raised.
Was that their field?
Yes.
Yes.
And everything west of the school and behind the school and up behind Bulgers was gladiolas, phlox, and baby's breath.
Actually, from Maple Street all the way around, that was their farm,
Yeah.
where the Nazarene church is.
Well, there were gladiolas clear out there by Glen Brown. Was that part of this, or was this someone else?
Might have been, he might have leased some ground out there, but they didn't own that. I remember going behind Bulgers and that,
Sure,
planting gladiolas back in there, but it kind of wrapped around the back there, so depending on where Brown's butted up there.
Sure.
But they raised them for years, and I have to tell the story because my dad never said much, but my mom made up for him. Okay, so one year, Dad and Lamar went over there, and they were evidently Lamar and them lived over there. Grandma and them was living uptown here, and they had to stoke the boilers for the greenhouse. Well, they run over there in a hurry, stoked the boilers, and left. Blew one of the greenhouses up, burned it down. so yeah, so one brother would blame the other, and the other says, "No, you did it." So yeah, so yep.
And after that, like I said, Grandma and Grandpa lived uptown here. We haven't been able to pin down when they bought from the Floyd family, but they lived uptown here in the early 40s. In 1949, Grandpa sold to Washington Township, where the elementary school set into to the Washington
Yeah.
Township School.
Yeah, that's where the school
That's
property
where the
is.
school property came from.
Yep.
So he sold it to them, and later on, between then, closer to the retirement age, they sold to the Nazarene Church.
In the curve down there. Yep. Yeah.
And where all the little apartments are there, they sold that off. My uncle, which was Dad's brother, Lamar, and them, they moved to Florida in the early 50s,
Right.
57, 58, somewhere in that ballpark. So they moved to Florida, and that's when they started separating the property and making it go away. So,
South Bend Market, they sold tons of flowers. South Bend Farmers Market, if you remember where that was. It's still going, I think, isn't it? So, yep. Talked about the Floyd house over here. Dale and I got a lot of memories of this old house over here. And if you've never been in it, you need to take the trip through it. I give Larry a picture of the Derby Hotel here just tonight. If you all remember, the Derby was right around the corner as you head out east of town there.
This is Derby, I remember quite well.
Well, Floyd's, from what I gather and read, Floyd's had some ownership in that Derby Hotel. And I give you a picture today, and I think he's in that picture there. I've got another couple pictures of Floyd when he's real young. And I picture him as being an old timer and this and that. He looks like a young gangster out of Chicago. So, all dressed in suit, tie, hair slicked back. But he had some interest in that Derby Hotel right around the corner there too, which would have been right around the corner from the DX, if you remember the DX station there. So Sinclair station, yeah.
Now, Rick, when did you say the Brindley Florists?
We're trying to pin
Operated on that.
the date down, but I'm going to say the middle 40s, middle to late 40s, because I can remember being in there as a real young toddler. My mom worked part-time up there. She never worked anywhere else until all our kids were raised and out of the house. But went to the library in 1952. They were advertised in the 52 pennant. So I know it was going in operation in 52. But we used to dig a lot of phlox and baby's breath, and I don't know if anybody remembers, used to set them out front there along the highway, and people come in there and buy phlox and gladiolas and all that stuff. So my grandma was the kind of the head honcho of the flower shop. Okay, she did all the bookwork, she did all the making the corsages, did all the setting it up. My gramps was the farmer and the delivery man. Okay, so every time my grandma get a load of flowers ready to go, she'd holler at my gramps. I'd go help him. We'd back up the station wagon, load them up. You get in that station wagon and it smelled beautiful because all these flowers, right? My gramps, about 2 blocks down the road, he'd light up a big cigar. Because the only time he'd smoke is when he'd get away from my grandmother. So here we go down the road, all these flowers smelling good, and now it's smoky in there. So, yeah. Okay. I don't know, any of you remember going to the flower shop? Dale and I are looking for pictures. If anybody has any old pictures of the greenhouses or flower shops, for the life of us, we can't come up with any. John Stout, a friend of mine, who is one of the Landis gal's grandsons, gave me a picture about 10 years ago of one of the greenhouses. It was Molly's greenhouse, but I've lost it. I couldn't come up with it. So if anybody's got any old pictures or see anything like that, we'd like to have copies of it. And especially of the florist, the Brindley's florist. There's a picture inside, huh?
Yeah, I found that one.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we're looking for a little more history there because I got a lot of memories there, but my memories were with my gramps. So anyway, I was going back to this. If you ever went up to that greenhouse, I don't know if any of you ever did, my gramps inherited a big black lab named Jet, and that dog was always muzzled. It was my dad's sister's dog, and she never took care of it, so Gramps ended up taking it. The dog wasn't really mean, but it looked like it'd eat your head off. And he always had that dog muzzled, and he had it tied between the coal chute on the house and the shop. And he had a chain long enough from about here to that door, and it would stop just short of the flower shop. And so my Gramps, I think he just got a kick out of watching people's expressions. So he was just that kind of guy.
I used to take that alley down there, and I used to take that alley.
Yes.
I don't know part of that dog.
I know, you remember? Yes.
I remember that dog.
I have a picture at home. I couldn't find it today, but I was going to bring it over. So it was a big, bulky black lab, and it always had a muzzle on him.
Well, he needed one, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
He scared the crap out of me.
Yep. In the later years, Mom and him they went to Florida every year, went to Arizona. He built his own motorhome and took off, and they spent the winters down there. So that's kind of what he did. And then my mother, like I say, she never worked till we were all completely gone from the house, and she worked 17 years for IMEX down the road here, and got a little bit of pension retirement from IMEX down there. So.